Welcome to the Church of Thomas. Samurai Sword, 7/22/07. When I was 5 years old, I started having terrible dreams. Some were about falling. Some were being alone. One was about being attacked by a monster and devoured. These dreams repeated every night. The one about being attacked was worst. The dream would start with me looking behind me and seeing a great, big, ugly dragon. When I tried to fly away, it was right behind me. I could not get high in the air. It was right behind me. It would catch me and tear me to pieces and eat me, and I would wake up in pain at that point. After several nights of this dream, I was fighting to stay awake. I wanted the pain to stop. I wanted to get away. I begged God for help. The next time the dream started, I heard a voice. It was God telling me to turn around and hold out my hand. God told me what I needed would come. Fighting my fear, I turned to face my attacker. I was determined to face it this time. When I turned to face the dragon, it had so much hate in its eyes. It was looking forward to my fear. This actually made me a little angry. I was not going to let it make me be more afraid. When I held out my hand, a sword filled my hand. It felt like it had grown there as part of my arm. My hand closed around the hilt. The dragon's look changed, adding anger to the hatred. It charged me. I swept my arm across the dragon's path. When I blinked, I was confused. I was in one piece. I was not hurting. I had not died. I looked down. I had to do this because I had flown up out of the reach of the dragon. What I saw was that the dragon was dead on the ground. Its head was cleanly cut off its body. It could never hurt me again. I was crying with relief. I thank God for this wonderful help. I thank God for my deliverance. I held out my hand to give God back the sword in my hand. God did not move to take it back. God told me that it was mine, that it had always been mine. God told me that it was just being held for me until I asked for it. The dream never came back to haunt me, and I still feel the sword with me when I need it. I have always been drawn to fire and sharp objects. Grandpa gave me my first pocket knife around age 7 or 8. I had it close on my hand often until I figured out how to hold it just right. These cuts did not deter me from my joy at sharpening it and using it. I was very happy to get a locking blade knife later, much safer. As a result of these interests, I even considered becoming a blacksmith. I have embraced the imagery of Jesus as the sword of God. All of God's angels are swords of God. This definitely added to my fascination with swords. My interest in blacksmithing, sharp things, and fire all came together when I had an opportunity to watch part of the process involved in making a sword. It was not an ordinary sword. It was a samurai sword. In Japan, a tradition of sword making evolved into a higher art form. These are not ordinary swords, they are samurai swords. Not all processes working with iron will produce a good sword. A master smith even uses the small metal impurities to their advantage. Small amounts of tungsten, chromium, carbides can greatly increase the strength of the resulting steel. How you melt and cool the metal affects it as well. So what makes a samurai sword special? I cannot speak to the formula involved. That's a tightly held secret. The metal blank is long and square chunk of iron. It is repeatedly heated to soften it. While it is soft and malleable, it is pounded flat. At first look, you think to yourself, it is too thin. What is going on? Then they fold this thin piece back on itself. It is reheated over and over again. When it is bent back on itself, this is repeated over 100 times. The master sword maker observes but does not deliver a single blow of the hammer. They have 2 teams of young, strong men. They pound and fold at the master's command. When they start to get tired, they are relieved by the other team. The sword blanks are never allowed to rest or get cold. The master can tell by the color of the metal what the temperature is. If it goes off temperature, it is quickly reheated in the fire until the master judges the color is right again. It is a very concentrated job to constantly watch for the optimal conditions so that the blade is not ruined. I was fascinated by the process, but did not understand most of it. There was a metallurgist that helped me out. He was standing there with me watching. The goal is to get the crystals in the iron to all line up in the same direction. The pounding thin layers, the repeated heating microwells between the layers, the folding back along its length aligns all of these crystals along the length of the sword. The many layers add flexibility. This helps a blade to not shatter from being too brittle. The iron crystals all line up the same, add great strength. At the end of this creation, it is cooled quickly in water. This is called quenching. It sets the qualities built into the blade for the rest of its life. The samurai swords are world-renowned for their keen edge and durability. There are samurai swords in collections made centuries ago that are just as sharp and flexible as they were when they were crafted. I see a connection between samurai swords and angels, next generation angels in particular. Next generation angels are modeled from raw materials that are impure. God works with them through the flaws and impurities to create a tool that is wielded by the hand of God. God keeps a constant watch on the conditions to keep them just right. Like the master smith, no variance is left to chance. Next generation angels go from a lump of useless ore filled with impurities to a representative of God's love. Through many lives of pounding, they have been made more flexible. The constant fires of life have helped them strengthen them as well. Some people have told me that this view is rather violent. I remind them that a sharp knife does the least damage to what is cut. A surgeon will only use the sharpest scalpel to operate and help heal someone. I see next generations in this vein. If evil needs to be cut out like a cancer, it is always better to use a sharp tool. If there are chains binding someone, what better to do than to cleave them in two? To cut through lies and hypocrisies. Better to have the symbol of a samurai sword than a butter knife. God is not turning children loose with weapons that promote healing. These are people who have stood the trials with distinction. They have been tested, beaten, shaped, and quenched, setting them to their new roles. At their best, they do not prop up shelves, but are doing the work that God has set them to do. God has made you to cut out cancer and free people from evil. What will you do with your gift? Will you allow yourself to hang as an ornament on the wall or a shelf prop? Or will you do what God needs done and step up to be wielded by God? God bless the whole world, no exceptions. Angela